Welcome to Ragnar Riders Shop Talk, the ultimate pit stop for all things two-wheeled and roaring. We are mostly ordinary guys who live and breathe the motorcycle lifestyle. From our personal journeys to gripping product and accessory reviews, bike builds that redefine the road, the latest industry buzz, and a sneak peek into our future travels, consider this your front row seat to our motorcycling odyssey. So kick back, relax, and let the engines roar as we dive deep into the world of chrome, leather, and the sweet symphony of the open highway. Welcome to Ragnar Riders Shop Talk, where the rubber meets the road and the stories unfold in the wind.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case may be for you. Welcome and thank you for tuning into the Ragnar Riders podcast. I am one of your hosts, DJ Seeley. With me today in the studio, I've got Randy Boren.
That would be me.
This is our beginning to our podcast. Listen, I want you guys to get to know us, but I want you to get to know us organically as we move through. So I just want to jump into the meat and potatoes of things. Randy and I started riding together, I don't know, what, 2-3 years ago?
Been about
Has
2 or
it
3
been that
now,
long?
yeah, it has. Going on 3.
And really, we just want to share with you guys what we've learned as we've started our journey with Harleys, and we'll get into some other things as well. But our first series that we want to start with is the camshaft. This is something that, I don't know, Randy, how many hours do you think you've spent researching camshafts?
Probably more than I've done the other stuff that I need to be doing, but I would say definitely, 20 plus hours of just time burning on the computer.
I agree. I would probably be embarrassed to know. But it's something that's very individual. There's a ton of them out there. And so Randy and I are blessed to have experience with a number of them that we want to be able to talk about. That's one thing that I didn't get early on when we started riding, when we started researching these. I didn't feel like there was any one person that I could go to that had experience with this one and this one and this one and this one. It was just a manufacturer that I felt like was trying to sell me their product, and that really wasn't what I was interested in. I wanted to look at the gamut of them that were out there, compare them to what I was doing and what I wanted, and choose the one that fits for me. And I think I've made good decisions. I'm pleased with what I've done so far. But
I concur with that, just on that very note, because even discussing going to the local dealerships, was not really an option because they have their favorites.
No, sure.
One they want to push Screaming Eagle. I'm not opposed to it. One of our other guy that's not here that will be joining us at some point down the road, that's what he's got in his. But they kind of have their agenda. So I think we felt like we went to rallies and we talked to people. But I think at the end of the day, we felt like that we were left to our own resources. If we wanted to really be diverse and learn, we were going to have to do it on our own.
Yeah, no doubt. We talked to one of our local dealerships, and I'm sure you guys, if you've researched cams at all, you've heard of Woods. Woods Cams is local here to our state.
They are.
I feel like there's some favoritism there. I've actually got a Woods cam in one of my bikes. Happy with it, so we'll spend some time talking about that. But to Randy's point, everybody kind of had their favorites, and it left you wondering, is that their favorite because it really is the better performer? Mm-hmm. Is it their favorite because it's what they've got the most profit margin in? Is it their favorite because
being paid to push it, or whatever
the case may be? I felt like I needed to go out and do my own research, look at each one, talk to as many people as I could talk to. And so I just want to share with you guys, from the get-go, what we've learned, how we arrived to the decision that we've made, and what we got out of it. So I guess first of all, Randy, what made you go to YouTube and search camshaft the first time? Like what sparked your interest in a camshaft?
So I think in the discussions that we've had down through the months and years was, we have 117s in our bikes from stock. And our initial thinking and thought is that this is from the factory has probably more than our sphincter muscle will ever be willing to test.
Sure.
Just out of the box.
Yeah.
But as we rode more, and dare I even say we got bored with some of the things we were doing and seeing, going to rallies and seeing other bikes and then starting to dig, it was like, okay, well, now I'm ready to take mine to the next level. Mm-hmm. So that requires research and digging, and so there ensued YouTube and Google. Oh my God, I was not prepared for the onslaught of. I'll even go so far as just to use right off out of the gate here, just saying almost the bullshit. I mean that we saw from different websites and different brands all pushing a certain thing. You really saw, or I'll speak for me, I really saw very little what I felt like was equal participation from across the board at the numerous camshafts. There's so many.
There are.
I mean, I don't.
I am convinced 100% that there's just a tremendous amount of margin in manufacturing and selling camshafts because of just the sheer number. There's dozens of different camshafts, different profiles, different manufacturers. They're all across the board, but yeah, I agree with that. You start riding and you get to a point where it's you want it to do a little more, you want a little more excitement, and that's the next step, the infamous stage 2.
I mean, we were willing to pay, just for the sake of saying a number, we were willing to pay $1,000 just to park at a red light and hear it go potato, potato, potato.
Yeah. So that was my next point. I told you the other day that I had a conversation with Bob over at Fuel Moto, and Bob, props to you. I really enjoyed our conversation. We are looking for sponsors. So, but Bob told me that one of the cams that I picked, in full disclosure, is S&S 475. I've got it in my Road Glide. And Bob and I talked about it, and he said, it's really not one of my favorite performers. It's not the right cam for me, but we have so many people that buy that camshaft for that sound.
Yeah.
It's got to me, the 475's got a very distinct sound. I can go to a rally and pretty well pick out that camshaft out of a group of bikes once I hear it lope.
Right.
That's right. Love it, love the sound, but it's not the right cam for everybody or for every riding style. But that was Bob's point, was a lot of people are simply chasing a sound at idle.
Right. Well, you're talking about the Harley world here. So, and although, I've owned domestic and foreign bikes through my life, my Harley experience is more recent. And it is almost a Harley world that everybody else lives in when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And it is a bleed over, in my opinion, from one cam to another. There are a few distinct differences, and I think the 475 S&S is definitely one of those. But you and I made mention several times about, what are we really talking about here? It's like cam plates. Do you want orange? Do you want red? Or do you want blue? Because at some point, the height of the lobe and the width of that is written in the specs, and they're all micrometers apart.
Yeah. There was one instance I can remember. John was with us, and we were talking, and he had just kind of gotten fed up with the back and forth. You're watching this video and this guy says this, and you're listening to this podcast and this guy says this, and he's like, I really feel like I could just take all these things, throw them in a box, shake the box up, and grab one out, and that's what I'd be happy with.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's wrong.
I really, and technically, if you took any of them, if you did that, would you really put one in and go, damn, I chose the wrong one?
I didn't really do what I thought.
I don't think that's the case. Now, maybe when you got up to the 5 Series and you got up to performance, big bore stuff, maybe then. Maybe there's some differences, but you know, the stage 1, 2, and 3 situations with cams, I just think it's just too close.
I don't, and even when you look at dyno charts, and to be clear, I don't want to get into a situation where we're spreading out 30 dyno charts and you're expecting me to analyze those and tell you much of anything. I'm not that guy. But you know, their max torque and max horsepower from each camshaft are so similar. You know, where they hit in the RPM range is going to vary, but it simply, they're all so similar. And to John's point, when you look at that and you go, well, maybe you're right. But I tell you, I've got the S&S 475 in the Road Glide. I did a 22XE in my Ultra Limited. I've now got the 468 Redshift in my trike. Have ridden all of them, and there are some distinct differences.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure I'll let you talk about what you've put in yours. But to me, I have to ride the bikes differently.
Yeah, I agree.
And I wish in the beginning that someone would have been more clear with me about that being the difference.
Universal information that would have helped, you know, decide.
Yeah.
Because on the heels of what we just said and what I said about, you know, the bucket and the choosing one and you probably not going to go, damn, I chose the wrong one. Well, and that is until you get on it. You crank it up, you got a lope from all of them. Some a little different, as we've learned. Red light, acceleration, something. But if you decide to enjoy that throttle,
Sure.
then you start learning the difference between what one will do and maybe what one will not do. I learned that really quick in my Road Glide that I put the Cyclorama 482 in.
Yeah.
You know,
That sounds good too.
yeah,
I love the way that bike sounds.
it just it's got it, and in my Limited I put the Star 3030. I love it, but it does not lope like the Cyclorama or the S&S 475. Not even close. It's got a nice lope, but it's not. You know,
Sure.
not either one of those.
And yeah, to your point, it just it feels a little different. Is my Woods 22XE, is your Star 3030 capable of making you say, oh shit?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, it is.
in a heartbeat.
They get down the road.
that's right.
It's just a different pattern. I find with my Road Glide, slow speed maneuvers, I'm going to be in first gear on the Road Glide that on the Redshift 468 or the 22XE, I'd be doing in second gear.
Right.
Because first gear, it's liable to jump out from under me.
Yeah.
The 475 it likes more RPM. It wants to be 3,000 to 4,000 RPMs, no doubt about it.
It's
That's
hungry.
its happy spot,
Yeah.
and it wants more at that point.
I agree.
Much lower than that, and you know, I'm jockeying the throttle a little more
Yeah.
just to keep those RPMs up because it's going to chug a load a little bit down there at that 1,000, 1,500 range.
And not, you know, motorcycles in general. And I run outboard motors in the boating world. You know, they like the RPMs they like.
Sure.
You know, and initially, excuse me, initially getting back into motorcycling a few years back, kind of had to kind of relearn that, you know, thinking that, well, I'm going down the highway, I need to get to a low RPM and a high gear as quick as possible and just cruise. And motorcycles don't like that.
No.
And there's no performance really south of 3,000 RPMs. You know, most of your cams, especially on the Stage 2 version, are going to hit between 28 and 35, their initial catch. Some a little lower, some a little whatever. But you know, that is a thing that we have both learned since we have cammed everything. Now we're getting to ride them and experience them. We're like, okay, now we see some difference, and we feel in the seat some difference. You know, it likes RPMs.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to compare the two; they're not the same. But if you take a guy that's never ridden a motorcycle, but maybe has driven a manual transmission car, his instincts on the motorcycle are going to be to use as little clutch as necessary. You know, you clutch in, clutch out.
Yep.
You know, shift, you're done, and not ride that clutch because you're going to burn up the clutch. And that was one thing with me getting started in motorcycling was understanding that that's a wet clutch, and you can ride in that friction zone, stay there all day.
You're not wearing anything out.
You're not wearing anything out.
Yeah.
And the camshaft was no different. Once you put in one of these higher lift performance cams, you know, cruising 30, 40 miles an hour, I'm finding myself in third gear.
Yeah.
You know, you get up 50, 60 miles an hour, you're in fourth gear, and you're just sitting there.
That's right.
It's not like in the old truck that you used to beat around in, that it was, you know, you're constantly shifting and going to that higher gear. It's not there. My Road Glide will sit in fourth gear as long as I want it to be. Just thrilled to death to be there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a scenario that, being in the motorcycle world, that you know, we've taken on the learning curves of that process. And I grew up in the automotive industry, so you know, trying to compare the two, there is some similarities, but technically, when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, there's really not. You know, when I used to run, you know, trucks and some cars up at Lassiter Mountain here locally at some of the short tracks, you know, it was, you know, we were hot clutching it. There was no, we didn't use clutch. We started out with the clutch, and then after that, there was no clutch until we got to the end, because pushing the clutch in took time, and it took time we didn't have from a seconds perspective. But on a motorcycle, it's not necessarily that way, having. And that's another topic for another day, but you know, that in conjunction, clutch and other performance parts in conjunction with cams, you know, there's a noticeable difference in the performance of your bike. Even though we're nowhere near, you know, performance bagger. You know, we just got baggers that perform to our liking.
Sure.
And you know, there's no short track stuff in our future, at least anytime soon. But compared to what they were, I mean, holy mercy.
Completely different bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. So when you start talking about camshafts, one thing that seems to be kind of the defining factor amongst them, without getting into specifics, is you've got torque cams and you've got horsepower cams. Where do you live at? Would you say you're a horsepower cam guy or a torque cam guy?
Well, you know, I think, and we've had these conversations, and I think that it's a riding experience based on what you're doing. You know, I've got two bikes, and one is kind of my bike, and I get on it and I haul ass, and I enjoy. I have a little more fun with it. The other one is a two-up bike. You know, the wife rides. We load it down with suitcases and things, or whatever that case may be. So a little bit of an experience between the two. But I will say that at the stage 2 level, trying to find that cam that'll give you a little bit of both, I think, is an advantage. Yeah. And with the Road Glide, I think I got a little bit of torque, but I definitely got the horsepower side of that Cycle Rama 482. You know, we took a trip this fall me and my brother-in-law did to Daytona, rode about 2,000 miles, a lot of fun, and he and I had some fun leaving some red lights a few times when the road was clear and everything was somewhat safe as it could be on a motorcycle. And he and I, you know, he's got a 107 in his 2017, and we'd pop the clutch at the red light, and first and second gear, you know, he hang with me pretty good, but when I hit third gear and about 3,500, he just waved by.
Deuces.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, because he would, every time he'd catch back up, would go, man, there's just that section of speed and RPMs that you leave, and that's past that torque part. That's all horsepower. On the Limited, on the other hand, you know, it's a heavier bike. It's got the Star 30-30, and the whole premise of the 30-30 was to bring both of them up equally. Yeah. I'm still learning it, but I think it gives me a little bit, because, you know, factory comes in at a very small cam. You know, they're 262s, 250s, whatever. I mean, they don't bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, they don't.
And they're built for EPA performances and conducive to Harley's mandates or whatever it is.
MPGs or
That's right.
something.
That's right.
I don't know what they're built for.
and we discussed that, hey, make sure that, you try to keep some of that torque because, when you take off in first gear, you need to be able to, get off the ground, so to speak.
Sure.
And I'm still learning that part of it, but so far I'm pleased.
Yeah. I would say I'm the same way. My Road Glide is same. It's my hot rod bike. I've got the apes on it. It's got the stretch bags and slammed rear end. It's the hot rod bike. So went with the 475 in it. Love it. Went with the 22XE and the Limited like we talk about, but it's my touring bike. It's my country roads, day trip bike. And I'm pleased with the choice I made in it, but it's more of a kind of like the Star 3030. It's just an all-purpose cam. The trike, which is my 2-up tourer, wife rides with me on it, and much like on your Limited with Shelly, we go all over the place.
Yep.
And it is a torque cam made for the heavier load.
Yep.
All of its power comes in a lot sooner, a lot lower, works great. But what I do find is when I talk to people before making my decisions, I felt like with a bagger, everybody was trying to point me towards a torque cam.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, it's a heavy bike. It's oh, you're just touring around. And I don't know that I agree with them.
No, I don't.
No, I ride the two bikes differently for different purposes, and maybe it's just because I'm blessed and have bikes that I can have intentional purposes for, and other people don't. And
right.
But to just make a blanket statement and say, "Oh, you ride a bagger, so you need a torque cam," I don't agree with that.
No, I don't. And I think it was. I think it's known, like, and I don't know if maybe we disclaimed some of this in the beginning, but a disclaimer here: we are amateurs and we are fun guys that ride. We have no certifications. We don't have engineering degrees. We are not the guys that's going to bring your bike into our basement and tear it apart and put a big bore kit into it and do the micrometer and make sure that we're within 9,000ths of the valve springs and all that. That's not us. What we are, though, is Google mechanics, all right? YouTube mechanics, and we've done a lot of R&D on our own stuff, and you can learn a lot that way.
Yeah.
And we figured out that some of the myth, if you want to call it that, that's out there is just that, and that is a myth.
Yeah.
When we go to rallies in 2024, the last several years that we've went, it's a bagger's world. And everybody's not putting in torque cams. I mean, it used to 20, 30 years ago, you had Sportsters and you had the more what would be known as the biker bikes, whatever that might have consisted of and whatever brand. But today, nah, everything else just lives around in rent space in the bagger world. And we have figured out now, and I think it's coming around more and more popular, is that you can take an 850-pound bagger and put a horsepower cam in it and make that mofo smoke.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I've got one and you've got one, so we know it can happen.
If you don't think you can get excited,
yeah,
come get on one of our Road Glides and give it a twist, and I can assure you, your adrenaline will begin pumping, or endorphins or whatever.
Yeah, your sphincter muscle will tighten up beyond what you can control. I'll tell you that. And here's the thing: even when it was the stock 117, I didn't get all of it. I just didn't. It's not really my world. But every now and then, hey, I want to see what it'll do.
Yeah.
Now I find myself going, instead of every now and then, it's probably more like 50% to 60% of the time, because now I'm enjoying it. I'm learning how to manage it. It's there, and the cyclorama runs. The power range hits between about 2,800 and 5,800 RPMs.
Yeah.
That's a large range, but that tells me that I can get a little on that bottom end to get me to that middle to top, and then I've got a long way I can still haul.
Yeah.
And there were stretches in Daytona when we would hit some of those stretches where there wasn't a lot of traffic, and he and I were having some fun, that we were hitting 3 digits without even blinking hard. Yeah. And the bike was like, "What? You backing off now?" Sure. I'm just feeling it. Let's go.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Like you have to sit down and analyze how do you really ride your bike. Sure, you got your I'm gonna go out with the wife on the day trip and we're going to dinner or whatever, and you know, my wife has probably never experienced 4,000, maybe more, a little above 4,000 a couple of times.
On a consistent basis?
Yeah, for some reason, when she's with me and I start getting over about 3,500 RPMs, I get this pain in my side,
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Where she says that's enough. But certainly when I'm by myself, you know, the 475, I find myself shifting more.
Sure.
Than the 22XE. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. I mean, but you buy a motorcycle, you want to shift gears. It gets your mind off of everything else. You're focused on, you know, the clutch, the shift,
the accelerating through the gears.
Downshift, yeah, having to downshift in curves is not an annoyance to me.
Right.
Now, if you're the guy that wants to park it in fifth gear and ride
in a straight line,
yeah, riding a straight line, sure. Then the torque cam is probably the way you need to go.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all.
You know, my limited, I can park it for fifth gear, ride it from 30 miles an hour to 80 miles an hour,
yeah,
and not have to shift. And if that's what you want, that's it.
Yeah.
If you're more of an engaged rider and like to do the math in your head of which gear do I need to be in coming out of this curve, and I'm going to clutch, and I'm, you know, whatever, then don't be reluctant to go horsepower just because some mechanic somewhere told you, well, if you've got a bagger, you need a torque cam.
Yeah.
It's not true.
No, I excuse me, and I agree with that, and I think if we had a universal message for you know, our inaugural, you know, set here about these cams, would be do your due diligence. Don't be afraid to make a decision on your own based on things you find. You know, DJ and I, between the three of us, and there's, like I said, there's a third guy that's going to join us, but between the three of us, we've got 7 bikes. 6 of them's been cammed. So there's a little bit of knowledge, and only about one of them was done, and that would be John's, because he cammed his when he bought it. So he kind of wanted it, you know, all done when he took it off the showroom floor. And of course, when he gets here one day, he can kind of give more specifics of his thoughts on that. But that was the initial thing, is that he kind of wanted, so he went with what they told him was the thing to do, and that was the Screaming Eagle and the whole, you know, 9 yards that way. As we got into it and started buying more bikes between us all, R&D came into the plant. We had to do our research, and we had to do our digging. Now, granted, I will say that the Star 3030 came about for 2 reasons. One, I did the research, I liked what I saw, and I wanted it. All right, but the other one, which could also be a primary reason, was none of the rest of them had it. All right, so I wanted something they didn't have. Yeah. That was our point, really, to be across the board, was, to be honest with you. I mean, I wasn't going to choose one you had, you weren't going to choose one I had, because we didn't have to.
No.
There was enough out there for us to choose different. So between the 7 bikes, we've got 6 of them cammed, and there's 6 different cams. And to their own right, they all do their own thing, and it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun. But do your research. Don't be afraid to go against your mechanic or whomever that may be, whether he's a private mechanic or a dealership mechanic. It don't matter. You know, if you feel comfortable and you just want to trust him, thumbs up. That's awesome. But if
I envy you.
well, to a degree, that's a blessing. But if you're not happy with that answer, it's kind of like in the medical world. You know, they call it practicing medicine for a reason. You know, so
sure.
You go to the doctor, you hear what he says. If you're not happy with it, go get another opinion. He's not the end all be all. And the same here with what we're saying. That's kind of the reason why we wanted to do what we're doing.
Yep.
Is to offer an amateur version, an amateur information. And those of you that don't have a visual of what we are sitting here and not watching us on YouTube or some other visual social media, we actually have some parts laying here on the table, and the factory cam that I took out of the Limited is laying here. It's like a 262 or something.
Yeah, I don't
and
know what it says on
you know, don't be afraid to you know, ask for them and look at them and want to know the difference. What's the height? What's the width? What's the Where does it hit? Know these numbers because they matter. Once you put it in, unless you're willing to drop another 3,000 or 4,000, you're not taking it out.
Right.
So once you put it in, it's yours. So yeah, do your due diligence up front.
All right. So if you want to join in the conversation or got something to add to it, feel free to email us at rrshoptalk@gmail.com. Again, that's rrshoptalk@gmail.com. And tune into the next one. We'll dig a little deeper into this, talk about some of these other parts up here on the table that we changed out with our camshafts, and give you some opinions on that, or some ideas. That's what you may want to do as well. Randy, anything else?
No, I think we're good. And hey, John, we missed you, buddy. We're looking forward to you joining us. Yep. And hey, cheers. Enjoyed it. Let's knock it out. God bless you.